welcome back to Mount Mograph Summit 56, the 4 keyframe Lego build. So in this video, unlike some of my other videos, we're not necessarily going to build a complete project from start to finish, and it's not going to necessarily look amazing. So for this video, what we're really going to focus on is the process of making this with only 4 keyframes, which I think is awesome. So like I said, this isn't going to be the most amazing project when it's all said and done. However, you can take this project way farther than I did and do some really cool animations. So what we're going to do is actually use After Effects, of course, but what we're going to actually use is Cinema 4D Lite, which ships with After Effects Creative Cloud. So this may or may not be something that you've used before, but I definitely recommend watching this video. So I use Cinema 4D all the time, and I'm going to tell you right now that I'm going to die a little bit inside making this with Cinema 4D Lite. And I'm doing it because I'd like to get people who have only used After Effects into this little world of 3D and can see how you can integrate it into your own 2D projects and make some really cool and complex animations much more easily than by using just the stock and default After Effects program settings. So anyway, what we're going to do is create a new composition in After Effects. And what we're going to do is just right click into your project window and go down to New Maxon Cinema 4D file. So when you click this, it's going to ask you where you want to save it. I will save it to the desktop as New Project because I'm feeling pretty creative right now. So it's going to say adding file, and there we go. We pop up a window and it should open in Cinema 4D Lite. So I'm also going to say right now that if you do use Cinema 4D often, this video is totally not for you. This is kind of for new people, just to get them into this world, which I think is really cool, and I hope you guys like this. But if you have a regular Cinema 4D and like R15, R14, or even R16 if you're lucky enough, you're going to probably open up into the regular version, which I recommend using because there's a ton of shortcuts you can actually use with the full version, opposed to the Cinema 4D Lite, which is still pretty awesome for a free little thing that comes with After Effects. So anyway, we are now going to go ahead and jump into Cinema 4D Lite. It should have opened for you. If it doesn't, you might want to right click and just see what's going on with it. Looks like nothing, but anyway, mine's already open. So I got Cinema 4D Lite right here, and as you can see, we have this wonderful new program. So I'm gonna kind of go through this project like you guys might have never touched Cinema 4D. So if you have, I'm sorry, and maybe this video is not for you. But anyway, let's go ahead and just jump into it, and we're going to go through the basics of just moving around. You can use these little navigation bars up here to move. If you click and hold, you can zoom in, zoom out, and also rotate. However, there are shortcuts on your keyboard, and by pressing like the number 3, you can do the rotation. 2 is zoom in and zoom out, and 1 is to navigate. So that's your basic viewport navigation, which is pretty straightforward and is really not too complex once you get into it, which I recommend just doing your best to get through this because it's totally awesome once you're in this world. So anyway, what we're going to do is first change our timeline settings. So right now, as you can see, it's only at 3 seconds. So what we're going to do is just make this 10 seconds by clicking 10 here and pressing enter, and 10 seconds over here. So one thing I should say is actually yours might have opened with keyframes instead of the seconds, which is a weird view. So if you go up in a Cinema 4D Lite down to preferences, you can go down into your units and just change this animation unit to seconds instead of frames. And I think that's just more helpful when we're looking at a project. And the second thing I changed, because I'm working with a gray background and yours probably opened with gray, is if you go down in this menu to your scheme colors and your your editor colors, you want to change your background gradient to just click this guy and just change it to a color that is easier for you to see, because we're working with some gray objects which blended with the background that it comes with as default. So anyway, let's go ahead and just save this project and get rid of that asterisk up here. And if we jump back into After Effects, nothing has happened. So what we're going to do is drop our new project .c4d into our composition. And what you're going to see is we now have the grid that is in Cinema 4D inside of our After Effects. So by using these two tools together, we're going to be able to create some really cool images that would be a total pain to create in just a normal 2D animation program. So let's go back into Cinema 4D Lite and just get this project rolling. So up here, you have your primitives, and if we go and click this cube object, we're going to get a cube here. So let's once again save it. That's very important if you want to see what you've done in After Effects to save it. So if we jump back into After Effects, it's going to update and we now have a cube. And in your effect controls panel, you can click your renderer and actually click down to like standard final, and you'll see what's going on. And so the reason we're going to work with Cinema 4D Lite is because we're able to add stuff. Like if we create a new background and just drop it behind our project, our cube is now in this environment. So as you can see, this is already starting to be cool, and it's a lot easier than trying to fake. Here, we'll do a quick animation. So why don't we just go and using your 3 on your keypad or this little navigation guy, just zoom on over to the front of this square until you have a kind of front-on perspective, and click this little key icon right down here. So we're going to click this. It's going to set some keyframes on our object, and then we're going to zoom forward in time just on your timeline to maybe like 77, and we're going to press R to bring up our rotation tool, or you can click up here this little rotation object, and we're going to rotate it, let's call it 180 degrees, and set another keyframe. So the keyframing process is very similar to After Effects, but if we go back by clicking this button here and click play, you're going to see that we have this spin on our cube. So I'm going to save this and jump back into After Effects. And now when I scrub through this timeline, let me go ahead and actually switch this back to just the software render so it goes quick. Now when I scrub through this timeline, it's going to be a little bit slow, but you're going to see that we actually have this 3D spin on a 2D object inside After Effects, which is really cool. And you might have done this before with path layers and shape layers, but it takes a lot longer, and getting the perspective right is always a pain. But as you can see, even with this rough demo, you can see that we have a cool animation already getting started. So we're going to use these two tools together to create this cool little Lego build. And what we're going to do is stylize it so it actually fits in with the rest of After Effects compositions, or the style we're going with some flat and bright solid colors. So just with that example, let's go ahead and jump back into Cinema 4D and delete our cube, and let's just get started with this project. So we're gonna cover some stuff that you need to actually activate with this Lite version. And if you go up into this little Mograph module and click the fracture object, you're gonna actually get a little dialog that says activate this. It's totally free. Just say you want to register it. And how you do that is you go up into your help menu, go down to personalize and click it. And right there, you should have a little thing, and you just have to fill out your name and your email, and it'll send you an activation code, and then you enter it here, and you get 3 tools that we're going to be using for today's video, and will totally be awesome down the road for a free software. So anyway, let's go ahead and just create a cube. Once you have that set up, and in your cube, we're going to have our attribute manager right down here. And so this is where we change our 3D object's size. So what we're going to do is first knock down our X value to 100. So you can type that in or just drag these little sliders. And then we're also going to knock down our Y value to 100. So we now have a essentially a rectangle, and you can do Command R to preview that, or you can click this little button up here, this render view, and if you click it, you get the same thing. I'd use shortcuts because, like I said, I use Cinema 4D most all the time, so yeah, I'm dying a little bit with this limited tool set, but it's still going to be awesome. So let's go ahead and actually make our Lego cube, and this is going to be super easy. So what we're going to do is click and hold on our primitives up here and just select a cylinder, and that's going to pop up into our viewport. And once again, in our attribute manager, let's change some properties. So we'll make our radius 20, and we're going to make our height maybe like 50 or something, and it's going to disappear, but don't worry. You can either use this little button here, the move tool, or press E on your keyboard to bring up these arrows. And we're just going to grab the green arrow, which is the Y property or Y axis, and we're just going to drag it up until it's visible at the top of our object. And as you can see, if I do a quick preview, we're starting to get something that looks like a Lego cube. So let's go ahead and grab our cylinder. And this is where it might get a little confusing, but I promise it's really easy. You can use the shortcut F2 on your keyboard to jump into your top perspective, and F1 to go back into your normal perspective, or you can click this little button up here, and it's going to pop up 4 views, and then you just click in your top view, and it's going to highlight, and then click this button again, and that's going to jump into that view. So what we're going to do is select our cylinder, and we're going to start dragging it with this blue handle here, which is the Z axis, and we're going to just drag it a little bit and then hold shift, and it's going to jump to normal numbers. So it goes by increments of 10, and just drag it up 50 centimeters so it's at this portion of the rectangle. Hold command and drag down, and that's going to actually duplicate it, and then also press shift, and we're going to move this down 100 centimeters just like this so it's nice and even. So we can either press F1 to jump back into our perspective view, or in our top view you can click this little symbol right here and then click your perspective view, the one we want, and then click this guy again, and we're going to jump back into this view. So with those super basic steps, and we're going to do a quick preview, we now have what looks like a Lego cube. So we're going to save that and jump back into After Effects and see if our project is updating. And as you can see, it is properly. So also let's go ahead and knock down our resolution of our preview here and just knock it down to half in case your computer's not quite very fast, and that'll just keep the project nice and light. So I'm going to save this just as a new project 3, I guess. I can't type. And let's go ahead and just keep working with this. So we're going to jump back into Cinema 4D Lite, and I promise this gets really easy once we have this initial setup, but I think this is a really awesome opportunity for us to like jump into some Cinema 4D Lite stuff and just 3D animation, which is really helpful with 2D work. So down here in your material manager is what this is called. Just double click and it's going to create a new material or a mat. So if you double click this material, we're in a material editor, which all starts to make sense in a little bit. So what we're going to do to stylize it into the After Effects kind of style is unclick our color and unclick our reflectance and just turn on our luminance channel. So make sure this is highlighted and go up into your color of this, and we're going to select just kind of a random gray color. So something like that looks good, and we can close it. And what we're going to do is actually drag this color onto our cylinder and drag it onto our second cylinder. So now when I preview it, the luminance channel makes it so nothing can reflect, so you don't get any shading like you do on the rest of this object, so it looks like a flat design. So if I put this also on my cube, we're going to see our cube has kind of disappeared because everything is this bright color. So I'm going to do Command Z to undo that, or click this arrow up here. And now what we're going to do is stylize the rest of this object. So what we want to do is make these different panels into different colors. And you can't really do this in the light version unless you kind of cheat by grabbing the cube and pressing C on your keyboard to make it editable, or select your cube and click this little editable icon up here. And what that does is make it so we can click into our polygon mode. I'm so sorry for the confusion, but this is going to be really cool when we're all done. So if you click your polygon mode, we're going to be able to select these polygons. So what we're going to do is select our side polygon and hold shift, our top polygon, and just remember to use your navigation to zoom around our other side polygon, and then under the object, click that icon. So we now have all these cool colors, and what we're going to do is create a new material, double click into it and turn off our color and our reflectance and turn on our luminance, and just create another gray color. And you want it to be different than the first one. And then with all these still highlighted, just drag that color onto our highlighted section. So when you do this, it's going to create a tag. And as you can see, we now are starting to get this kind of perspective. So we want to add one more color to this side of the cube. So if we grab our cube, we'll just, once again, if you're in polygon mode, select this side here, and then on the other side, select the other one. And we're going to actually create one more material, or you can just use the same material right here. So I'll actually do that and just drop it on there. And so as you can see, with even just two colors, we're starting to get some perspective. So one more thing I'm going to do is actually create one more material, and just double click here and click into this material manager and turn off the color and the reflectance and turn on the luminance. Go into your colors and just pick another gray color. And what we're going to do is just select our cube one more time and just select the top and drop that new gray color onto it, just so we actually have a 3-color scheme. So we do get all those different perspectives. So this is looking fine for a cube. Now what we're going to do is press C on our cylinder and C on our other cylinder, or you could have just selected both and click this make editable icon right up here. And let's go back into our object mode because we're still in polygon mode by clicking this icon right here. So use model mode. So with that all selected, let's go ahead and group these objects into one by using the command Alt G on your keyboard, and that's going to group it into a null. Or you can, with these selected, right click and go down to group objects, and that'll also group it into a null. So that is honestly the hardest part of this animation, was building this little Lego guy. Hope I explained it pretty well. So let's go ahead and name it by with whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call mine Lego piece. And now what we're going to do is actually get to the fun part of this animation, where we actually get to build our little house. So with your Lego piece selected and in your move mode, by clicking this or by pressing, what was it? It would be, wow, I can't even remember. I use the shortcut so much I can't remember what's what. But you want to be in your move mode by pressing E on your keyboard. And now what we're going to do is actually duplicate it just like we did with the cylinders at the top of this. So you're going to hold command and just drag out, and the numbers of the centimeters of how far you're moving are going to pop up. So you can hold shift and that's going to jump in increments of 10 then. And since our Lego rectangle was 200 centimeters, we can drag it out 200 centimeters and call it good. So for this build right here, what we're going to want to do is actually get into our front view. So F3 on your keyboard will take it into the right view, or if you're in your perspective, you can once again click this little button up here and go on into your right view this time and click into your right view. So let's grab our Lego piece 2 that we just made and just move it over just a touch. So when we do a quick preview, we actually have a line separating it. It's not going to connect perfectly. So let's just keep doing this. We'll hold command and drag out again. And this time we can just kind of read those numbers. We don't necessarily have to hold shift unless you want to and make it really perfect. And then just drag it out just a little extra every time. So let's go ahead and do maybe 5 of these. So something like this. And if I jump back into my perspective view by pressing F1 or by clicking into this little button up here and clicking perspective view and clicking in again, we're now going to have a nice row of these rectangles, which we'll be able to duplicate to create this cool animation. So let's go ahead and press F1 on our keyboard, make sure we're in perspective mode, and just make sure everything is looking pretty good. So zoom around your scene, see if you're happy with those lines. Doesn't really matter that much. So jump back into your right view by pressing F3 on your keyboard or by clicking this button once again. So with, oh, I did not go in the right view, but so I'm in the right view. So let's go ahead and actually in our object manager, select all of our Lego pieces. And what we're gonna do is make sure your move tool is selected by pressing E on your keyboard or this button. And you're going to hold command and just drag up, and once again try to get a little bit of a separation between those two objects. So once we have that set up, remember our rectangle is 200 centimeters and we want to actually offset this. So what we're going to do is hold shift and with those selected, just drag it over 100 centimeters. So something like this. So now when I preview this, we're going to have a nice little wall that's coming together. So we're going to do this actually 3 more times, and we're going to eventually get a really cool wall that will be able to animate with 2 keyframes, believe it or not. So let's go ahead and grab all these Lego pieces once again and hold command and just drag up on the Y-axis just like this, and then we'll do it one more time. So our layer manager is now full of all this wonderful stuff. And when I preview this, we have a cool little wall built. So if you jump back into your perspective view by pressing F1 on your keyboard, we now have a very cool little Lego wall. So let's go ahead and press Command S to save it or File Save and jump back into our After Effects. And as you can see, it's updated, so everything is still working properly. So if we jump back into Cinema 4D Lite, you can select all your objects by just clicking and dragging over them or doing Command A with your object manager selected. And what we're going to do is actually put this into one of those tools we just activated called a fracture object, which is really, really powerful. So we're going to go down to the Mograph module and just click the fracture object and then select all your Lego pieces and click them and drag it till you get this little arrow with a square and drop it into your fracture object. So let's go ahead and press this minus sign to minimize everything, and that's no different than making an object in After Effects a child. So with this fracture object selected, let's just name this something like wall. So with our wall selected, nothing is happening. It's going to be a static wall. But when we put something in a fracture object, we're actually able to affect all the objects with what's called a Mograph effector, which is what we're going to be using. So we have this basic wall set up. Let's go ahead and get our 2 keyframe animation started. So with your mouse, go up into your Mograph module and select an effector. And what we're going to grab is a plane effector. So select this and we're going to see some arrows pop up, but we're not going to see an object. So click your plane effector in your object manager, go down into your attribute manager, as confusing as that sounds, go on over to your fall off, and the shape we're going to select is actually a linear shape. So click this and we're going to see some nice little lines pop up, and you can scale this up by pressing T on your keyboard and scaling up the object like this, or you can click this little icon up here for scale and scale it up. So let's go ahead and just move it by pressing E on your keyboard or pressing this button up here over to the corner of our animation. And then we're also going to rotate it by pressing R on your keyboard or clicking this rotate button and just grabbing the red band right here and just rotating this maybe about 150 degrees, so it's kind of diagonal to our wall. So with that all set up, let's go ahead and just move it a little bit more by using the move tool and dragging it down and dragging it over. And now what we're going to do is click our wall fracture object and go into our attribute manager and our effectors. Click our effectors and drop our plane effector by clicking and holding it and just dropping it into our effectors. So I'm sure this is starting to get confusing if you've never worked in Cinema 4D, but I promise it gets super straightforward from here. So we're now telling this fracture object that this plane object is going to be able to affect it. So what we're going to do is click this plane object and go into our parameters. So make sure that parameters is highlighted and you're going to see positional data is already checked off and it has the Y property on. So what this does is if I drag this plane across my object, we're going to see that we're getting an animation already happening simply by dragging this. So this is where the two keyframes can come in handy, because on this plane effector, we can go ahead and change a bunch of stuff. So let's turn our Y parameter up to maybe like 260 or something. You can either enter that or just drag this little button over here, and also turn on your rotation property. So let's click our rotation and just change some of the parameters. So we should probably drag our plane effector over a little bit so it's actually affecting our wall, and we can see what this these options are going to change. So if we turn our H up, we're going to see that we're actually rotating these objects, and this is our pitch, and then this is our banking. So let's actually play around with our H, which I forgot what that actually stood for. So let's turn this up to maybe like 37, nothing too crazy, and then also turn on our scale. And then under our scale, let's turn on uniform scale, and we're going to turn this number down to -1. So once this object has passed it, it's going to actually disappear. So we're starting to get this kind of cool animation happening that we'll do a lot more with in a second. So let's drag our plane effector over to the side of the wall where all the different wall pieces are gone. And we're going to go to the start of our timeline here and just set a keyframe by clicking this record active objects button, or this button right here. So we'll set a keyframe and then go forward in time to maybe like 5 or 6 seconds. You can actually see right over here, and we're just going to drag our object right across the wall until all the objects are visible and set another keyframe. So if we click this button here and go back to the start, we'll be able to press play and see that our animation is coming together pretty nicely. And in some ways this is a lot easier than After Effects and having to keyframe every object, which I mean is awesome. It's a big time saver, and we can definitely get into some more complex stuff down the road with Cinema 4D Lite, but I thought this video was a good kind of introduction and also kind of cool. So anyway, let's go ahead and make this a little bit more interesting by adding a random effector, so we actually get some more complex movement from these guys. So if we go up into our Mograph module, down to effector, and grab a random effector, it's going to pop up, and once again select your wall and just drop your random effector into your effectors area, and everything's going to get a kind of wacky little movement with it. But we can go into our parameters of our random effector, click parameter in your attribute manager, and we can just go ahead and change some of these properties. So I'll change my X, my Y, my Z even, and then also turn on rotation and do the same thing. We just want all kinds of crazy movement. Just to random numbers works great, and that's pretty much it. So let's go and select our plane effector, and you can see we have 2 keyframes. So if you click this button right here, we're going to be able to go to next keyframe. So let's click that, and it's going to jump forward to the end of that keyframe. And on our random effector, we're going to turn this effect down by clicking into our wall fracture object and going into our effectors panel right here, and then turning on a keyframe here with our random. So if you click this button down here, it's going to set a keyframe, and you might have to hold command if you're not using Cinema 4D or Cineware 2.0 Lite, which is in the new version of After Effects. And we're going to turn this down to 0, and it's going to turn yellow, so just make sure it turns red, which means you've set a keyframe. And then we're going to go back to the very beginning of our timeline and turn this random up to 100%. And once again, click this little circle, and it's going to set a keyframe. So now when I play this, we're going to see that we kind of have a pretty complex animation coming together with not a lot of work, which is really cool. So what we're now going to do is actually make this a little bit more interesting by adding multiple walls to this animation. So let's go ahead and select all of our objects and do the command Alt-G to group them, or right-click and go down to Group Objects and just name this Complete Wall Animation or something. So with that selected, let's go ahead and just duplicate this object. So we're going to jump into our top view by pressing F2 on the keyboard, or by going into this little panel here and selecting top and making sure it highlights and then clicking back in. So what we're going to do is use that copy trick, the duplication trick, to duplicate this whole animation. So what we can do is grab our complete animation and hold command and just drag the red this time over a bit. Actually, what we should do is just drag it out however much you want, holding command, and it's going to duplicate it. Or you can hold command and duplicate it here like that. And we're going to rotate it by using the rotation tool by clicking this, or R. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees. So just rotate it 90 degrees, holding shift so it jumps in increments of 10. And then just position this guy using your move tools roughly at the side of the wall, right about here. So if we jump back into our perspective mode by pressing F1, we're going to see we're starting to get a cool little animation. So let's see how this is all looking. So just like that, we're having pretty complex animation happening. So one thing is I put this on the wrong side. So let me grab this complete animation 1 and just drag this over to the other side like this. I can jump into my top view, F2, to make sure that I'm doing this properly. Just like this works great. And then what we're actually going to do is highlight both of these and hold command and drag them out randomly, and then press R for your rotation tool, or click this and rotate it 180 degrees, just like this. And then we're going to press E for our move tool, or select your move tool, and just position these two copies with the rest of the wall. And it, once again, doesn't really have to be perfect for this example. So we get something like this. So if we press F1 on our keyboard, we now have a nice little box all built. So if I go back on my timeline and just press play, we're already starting to get a pretty awesome animation for not doing a whole lot of work. So unfortunately, since these are all duplicates, all of our animation looks the same. But if we toggle down by pressing this plus button to our complete animation and select our random, we're going to go over to our effector here and change this seed, which is no different from like the seed in After Effects. Just turn it up to a random number, and that's just going to say it's different. And we're going to do these for each of the different sections by toggling down with that plus. So grab the random and just turn this up to something random, and grab random, make sure you're in the vector mode, and turn the seed up to something random as well. So now when we go back in time and press play, we're going to see that this wall all builds a little bit differently and has a little bit more character. So the last thing we're going to do is set a keyframe. So make sure you do Command S to save. We're going to set a keyframe on camera to get this movement into After Effecks. So if I toggle back into After Effects, it should update to our new little animation if you saved it. So let's go ahead and find an interesting point at the end of the animation. Maybe I like this diagonal view, and all we have to do is click a camera, and it's going to generate a camera based on the view we have. So in order to look into the camera, we need to click this little icon on the side of our object manager to get into the camera's view. So if you click that, we're in the camera's view, and what we're going to do is set a keyframe once again by clicking this guy, and then just going back to the beginning of this animation and using the move tools that we learned, which would be 3 to rotate, 1 to move up and down and left and right, and 2 to zoom in and out, or by using this to position our camera in a cool beginning location. So maybe zoom in on the object, something like that, and then just set a keyframe. And Cinema 4D will interpolate the keyframes for you and make a cool little animation. So if we press play, we're now going to have a pretty cool camera movement as well as a cool Lego building. So let's go ahead and just save this and jump on into After Effects and see what we have. So it is going to preview a little bit slow because it's coming through another program. So you just kind of have to wait for that, but it's worth it in the end, generally. And I actually have to make this timeline a little bit longer here. I'll make it to, I guess, 6 seconds because that's all I have. But now when it plays, we're going to see that our animation is inside After Effects and on our After Effects background. So from there, you're going to be able to add your color. You can add 2D effects onto it. You can change the background. You can add so much more to these projects and get a really, really cool, complex animation that you generally could not get inside After Effects. So let's go ahead and just wait a second here and see how this is all coming together. Really slowly. Good thing I put it in half resolution. And we are just going to play it. But as you can see, here's our animation inside After Effects that we built with only 4 keyframes. So if you want to see how this is going to look as a final version, you can go into your effects panel and click your render and just go down to standard final, and it's going to update to the final style that you have. So I'm just going to stay on this keyframe for a second and show you what else you can kind of do. So let's say that you also want to integrate some 2D animation in this and you're really comfortable in After Effects. You can easily like grab a square and just put it in there and then just drop it behind your layer and then animate it around. So there's a ton of stuff you can do, you know. You can add little accents. You can add all kind of movement paths. You can use this as an alpha channel. It's really robust, and I hope you guys have fun with that. I hope I explained it all right, and if you would like to see more complex animations using Cinema 4D Lite, let me know in the comments. That's the only way I know if you guys like the video or not, and that's awesome. Anyway, this was Matt from Mount Mograph. Keep rocking on, and I hope you guys like this video. Peace out.